Today we're diving into a really unsettling case, one that explores something called systemic attrition. It's about how a person can be, well, systematically wiped from their professional life. And not in a courtroom, but through the quiet, invisible gears of bureaucracy. We're going to break down the evidence from a whistleblower's case against a major public university. Let's get right into it.
So this is the central question we have to ask ourselves. How is it even possible for someone to be completely erased from their career, not by a judge and jury, but by a series of administrative moves that create this kind of shadow blacklist? It's a process that hums along in the background, using the very systems that are supposed to keep us safe.
All right, to really wrap our heads around this, here's our game plan. First, we're going to break down the official system at the center of this whole thing. Then, we'll walk through 3 key pieces of evidence to see how that system was allegedly used. After that, we'll look at the incredible personal cost, uncover a major contradiction it all points to, and finish with a big question about who exactly is supposed to be watching over all this.
Okay, first things first, we have to understand the official framework that makes all of this possible. This isn't some secret, made-up thing. It's based on a formal, national system.
It's called Behavioral Threat Assessment and Management, or BTAM for short. Now, on paper, its purpose sounds pretty good, right? It's meant to be a proactive way to identify and stop targeted violence before it happens. It's a tool for institutions to manage potential threats. Now, what's really important to get is that this BTAM framework isn't just some internal policy a university came up with. The documents show it comes straight from principles developed by the Department of Homeland Security and the U.S. Secret Service's National Threat Assessment Center. So we're talking about a federal model for flagging concerning behaviors, and that's exactly what gives it so much power. And inside this system, there are 2 terms you absolutely have to remember: fixation and leakage. Fixation is basically when someone is seen as obsessively focused on a grievance, and leakage is when they communicate an intent to cause harm to someone else. Keep these 2 words in your back pocket, because they are the key to understanding how this whole thing was allegedly turned on its head. All right, let's pivot to the actual evidence. The case presents what are called the 3 proofs, which lay out the argument that this violence prevention system was actually used as a tool for retaliation.
Proof number 1 is all about a tool that's become a huge part of getting a job today: the third-party background check. This comes from the case of Suzanne Grill versus the University of California. The claim here is that her career was effectively ended long after her initial lawsuit was supposed to be settled.
This table right here is the smoking gun of the blacklisting claim. It's a HireRight background check from 2022, a full 5 years after her termination. Look at this. The search status says attempted search not completed. That alone is enough to make any potential employer back away. Then there's an internal do not hire flag, which seems to be a direct violation of our settlement agreement that promised neutrality. But the real kicker, the thing they call the invisible mark, is that adjudicated 3 status. That's the code. It's an internal flag that tells any HR department using this global service that there's a problem, all without leaving a public trace.
Okay, so on to proof number 2. This one answers the obvious question. Well, if this was happening, why didn't she just report it? The allegation is that she tried, but was met with a pattern of systematic obstruction designed to stop her from reaching the very agencies that could help.
And the evidence for that is pretty chilling. It's right here in these forensic logs. They show emails sent to the California Victims Ombudsman just bouncing back again and again with a 550 5.4.1 access denied error. That's not a temporary glitch, that's a hard block at the server level. The legal argument is that this triggers something called equitable tolling. Basically, the clock on legal deadlines should be paused because she was actively prevented from filing on time. And it wasn't just a one-off thing. The logs show the same thing happened when she tried to contact the governor's office. Even her printer and ability to share files were allegedly blocked. And that brings us to the 3rd and final proof. This is where it all comes full circle. This is the piece that connects all of her actions right back to that official BTM protocol we talked about at the very beginning.
So how in the world does a whistleblower get turned into a potential threat? Well, this slide lays out the alleged playbook. You take perfectly legal, protected whistleblower activities, like filing lawsuits or reporting misconduct to authorities, and you simply relabel them using the BTAM framework. Her persistent fight for justice through the legal system, that's reframed as fixation. Her reports to the authorities about what was happening, that gets called leakage. And just like that, you've turned protected actions into administrative proof of concerning behavior.
So, what does it actually feel like to be put through something like this? What's the real-world cost? The documents lay out a truly devastating pattern of consequences.
Looking at the timeline, you can see this was a relentless process. It starts with a hostile termination in 2017 and the settlement in 2019, but it doesn't end there. 3 years later, the blacklist is discovered, and then the pressure ramps up even more.
The documents describe a period of false incarceration where she was out on bail for 2 years, before the case against her was finally dismissed. The fight was clearly far from over.
And the fallout just kept spreading. We're talking about over 20 police reports filed across 5 different counties for things like assault, and not a single one was picked up by a DA. The documents allege she suffered actual physical injuries from these attacks. On top of that, there was intense financial targeting, bank fraud, attempts to make her lose her property, and then there's this profound sense of betrayal. Her own lawyer allegedly took a whopping 60% of the settlement money, and then went to work for the other side.
Now, to suggest this might be part of a bigger picture, the evidence packet includes this testimony from an advocate named Shonda L. Day. She says she leads a support group of about 2,500 people, all of whom report eerily similar patterns of harassment, things like stalking, institutional abuse, financial sabotage, and even the use of paid informants. Her testimony really paints a picture of a potential widespread, coordinated problem.
When you put all of this together, you're left with this glaring contradiction, a massive gap between what the institution says on paper and what the evidence alleges it actually did.
I mean, look at this. On one hand, you have the University of California's official whistleblower policy, which is full of promises about protecting people from retaliation and conducting full investigations. And on the other hand, when Ms. Grill filed a public records request for her own employee files and the records from her lawsuit, documents that have to exist, the final official response she got back was just 2 words: no records found. It's one thing to deny a request. It's another thing entirely to claim the records don't even exist.
So after walking through this complex web of allegations and evidence, what's the big takeaway? Well, it really all boils down to one thing: accountability.
What this case study seems to show is a dangerous convergence. You have a national security protocol for assessing threats, a powerful third-party corporate background check system, and internal HR flagging procedures all intersecting. The alleged result is a system of attrition that is incredibly powerful because it operates quietly, in the background, without any direct or transparent oversight.
And that leaves us with one final and, I think, crucial question. When you have these powerful systems of assessment that operate in the dark with no clear way for a person to appeal, no transparent process, then who is watching the watchers? Who provides the oversight? And that's the fundamental question this entire body of evidence forces us to confront.